it.
Hello, we have got our part one, at least, of our 1,000 subscriber Q&A. We have a lot of questions. We're going to try to move through these quickly. We'll see how we do. So the first question from Pokemon Power is, what's your opinion on raffles? Seems like people hated on them a while ago, but even now, people like Gary are promoting pages who do raffles. Would love to hear your viewpoint.
Yeah, interesting question. So my general feeling on like raffles and other sorts of like added gambling elements to the already gambling of opening packs, I think it's fun. I don't personally see any problem with raffles. I think my issue is when people use gambling addiction sort of elements to like overcharge you. Or people who are telling you that doing a raffle is a good way to like make money and that you're gonna benefit from it. Because really the higher the gambling, there's sort of a gambling premium. And so the more gambling you're doing, likely the more you're going to be paying for that. But as long as you're aware of all that and you're paying for the fun, I think it's enjoyable. It's cool. I think gambling can be fun as long as people are really aware of that. I don't know. What do you think, Rafi?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And I say I price fun into the equation. So it's like when you're opening up a booster pack, it's very rare that like the booster pack will have a higher expected value than the cost of selling it sealed. If it is higher, like definitely open it. But otherwise, it's just like how much fun am I going to have doing it, and is it worth that cost differential?
Yeah. And the raffles, I don't know if you've seen any of them, but the raffles are those things where people pay for,
right. So theoretically, you could just calculate the expected value of your raffle ticket. It's probably not going to be worth it money-wise, but if you have fun, just like a lottery, might as well.
Yeah.
Next question is from Chris. Keep it up. We like the content. Please talk about websites where I can see values of specific Pokemon cards or products or whatever you guys use to source cards.
So generally ungraded, TCG Player is good. PokemonPrice.com is the best for PSA graded cards. You can also go to the PSA website and look at it. PokemonPrice.com is also really good because it does a breakdown of more of the analytics, and it does it in a way that's more user friendly than the PSA website, where it's a bit more difficult to find the information you want. So you can see the population reports. You can see how many are being graded over time, which is really important. You can see prices, all those sorts of things, and it's really good. And then Bulbapedia is the best source that I found for information, and also E4 is a website where a bunch of Pokemon people talk, and there are a lot of good guides and different things there for learning more about the cards.
Yeah, I agree. And I would only caution that with Pokemon Price and even Bulbapedia, sometimes the pictures aren't always accurate. So if you're still learning and you're trying to differentiate between like a shadowless or not shadowless, or trying to differentiate between a lot of the more modern things like rainbow rare versus full art versus like secret rare, even on Bulbapedia, sometimes they don't have a picture for every single one. So I would just look up those pictures on eBay, honestly.
And Pokemon Price, and another thing to add is that Pokemon Price there's some cards or items that are clearly shill bid that go for way over the value of what they've been going for. And Pokemon Price will sometimes capture those prices, even though they're not real prices. And that card will actually then come back on eBay, the exact same card, because it didn't actually sell for that price. And so you just have to be really careful with that. So you also want to check eBay sold listings. And if you're ever buying really expensive cards, you want to make sure that last sold one actually sold and actually has been selling at that price for a while. So those are all really important things.
Absolutely. Zachary asks, what was your girlfriend's reaction when you told her you collected Pokemon and how much you spent on it? Secondly, how did you and Rafi become friends? You want to go first, Jake?
Sure, yeah. So my girlfriend's attitude was like, we're not married yet, so it's your money. And I think that she's sort of supportive of it so far. I'm going to try to get as much collecting as I can, now as a still unmarried person. But she was cool with it. I actually started collecting, or got recollecting while we were dating. So before we met, I wasn't into it, and then after we met, part of that I started getting into it. Yeah, and she's supportive of that. We actually met through my girlfriend. Rafi's one of her close friends from high school, and like we met and hung out, and somehow it came up that we like both really liked Pokemon. So that was definitely a bonding a bonding moment for us.
Yeah, I was
What
like,
about you,
I was
Rafi?
wondering, right? Like, who's my friend's new boyfriend? What's he gonna be like? Are we gonna be friends? And I think we hung out a few times before we realized we both like Pokemon. And I was like, what are the chances? This is amazing. I'm married, no girlfriend, just a wife. So the reaction was also very positive, but I would say it was a bit different because I wasn't into Pokemon or Magic the Gathering or Legos or Star Wars sort of up until after we got married. I was into all that stuff as a kid, but only recently got back into it. And so it was like, she's like, oh, like you duped me. I didn't know you were so nerdy. But she actually likes all that stuff too. I taught her how to play Magic the Gathering on our honeymoon because she always wanted to learn. The second
Awesome.
question, oh yeah, how do we become friends? We answered. So next question is from Wonder Boy Nath. I would like to know more about Rafi's is in Taffy collection. What does he like to collect? Um, Thank you, Wonder Boy Nath. So I actually don't have a pretty big Pokemon collection. Most of it is just stuff from my childhood that I saved and like modern cards that I just like to open for fun. I was pretty into the game for a while, as I mentioned in one of our other videos, but most of my collection was online then. So recently I've been buying like occasional PSA cards, getting some of my older cards graded, still waiting for those to come back. I have honestly a much bigger collection of the Star Wars CCG. I'm trying to get kind of like one of everything and be really completionist there. And otherwise, I just go after the Pokemon that I like. I have like a few favorites, and I want to have some of the chase cards for those. Next question is from Max K. Any recommendations on good binders to safely hold cards that are in top loaders?
Um, for top loaders, huh? I'm not sure. The binders that I like and use anything with like a side sleeve, so that the cards don't fall out. And I like binders that have like a leather, like the fake leather feel, just because I like the way that feels in my hands. What about you, Rafi? What type of things do you like?
Yeah, for everything, I use like the Z Folio 4-pocket binders. I'm used to it because for Magic, it's like 4 cards to the play set, right? And so you can have like 4 cards in a row instead of 3. But it's similar. It's like leather or like fake leather bound and side loading too, so you don't damage the cards. And I double sleeve everything before I put it in the binder. I don't feel like there's really a need to like have it be in a top loader and a binder. Jake, you were telling me something like I didn't realize before that PSA required you to send things in card savers rather than top loaders. What are your thoughts on card savers?
Um, Card savers are good because the card doesn't move around as much a lot of the time. Once you get it in there, it can be a bit hard to get it in there. I do like the card savers. I like the way they look. I like holding them and looking at my cards through the card saver sometimes. But they tend not to be as thick potentially. And also they're a little bit bigger and bulkier sometimes and they don't fit as neatly like in a box or packed. I worry that so in terms of like keeping lots of my cards in that, I only keep the cards that I'm going to grade in card savers because PSA wants them that way. And I sort of have a stack of those that I keep in a special box. And my process is whenever I have a card that I'm going to grade, I put it in a card saver, which reminds me that that card is good enough to grade probably, and put it in like a special spot away from my collection.
Nice. Big Kid asks, is there any good or easy way to tell if eBay listed raw cards are real or fake? Do you just have to buy from a trusted seller? So I guess, are you worried that if you buy a raw card, like it could be a fake?
There's always that possibility, and I think you kind of hit it on the head with buying from trusted sellers is always the best. You can like it's always a gamble if you're gonna buy from someone who has no eBay feedback or particularly someone who has a lot of negative eBay feedback. That I would never do personally. And it also depends on like the amount of money. And you can like I've bought a couple of fake cards and that looked real through the pictures because you really can't tell. As soon as I saw the card in person and held the card, I knew it was fake immediately. But through the computer you can't always tell, and I actually just sent those cards back and got my refund from eBay. And one time the seller got into a fight with me about it and claimed that it was real and that I was lying and it switched out the card. Terrible experience. And then the other time the buyer was like, or the seller, excuse me, was like, I didn't know. I genuinely didn't know. Please, keep the card, rip it up, and I'll send you your money back. And eBay didn't have to step in.
Yeah, I've actually bought a couple of modern cards too that ended up being fake, and it was the same thing. I mean, eBay like protects the buyer, unless if you're a seller with a lot of reputation, then I also wouldn't worry about being a seller. But I think, if the card is obviously fake, you can tell in the picture. If not, you need to hold it in your hands. The worst thing you lose is your time, right? Just having to deal with that transaction, report it, but you'll get your money back.
It's definitely a risk. Buying higher end ungraded cards is a risk, particularly if fakes get better in the future, and proxy cards that look like your first edition base set Charizard get better in the future. It's going to be something that becomes more of a concern. And part of the reason why those PSA cases, maybe even in lower grades after a while, will have that premium, because it authenticates the card for you. So you're not going to get scammed, which is huge.
Mm-hmm. Bad Heaven 22 asks, okay, serious question first. Who wins a 1 mile race, Jake or Raffy? Since we got the serious question out of the way, second question. How do you guys feel about flippers and pure investors, people that only keep sealed product to sell X years down the road in the Pokemon hobby? Do they help or hurt the hobby? 1 mile race, I think you would win. I'm terrible at running. How do you feel about people who are keeping sealed product? Are they good or bad for the community?
How do I feel about, flippers and
people who keep sealed product to sell years down the road?
Oh, I see. I mean, my first thought, and Rafi, would be interested to hear your thoughts too. I think that it's sort of it is the reality of any, booming popular hobby, that people are going to be buying modern product, holding it, and hoping to make a profit. It does irritate me that they're taking that away from like kids potentially, or people who just really want to open it at that original price and aren't necessarily trying to make money. But that's true for video games, for any hobby. All those sort of modern resellers that is the process of what it's doing. When something new drops and everybody buys it because they know they can then list it later that day for double on eBay. It's an irritating thing, but I totally get it. As far as being bad for the hobby overall, I think that it can cause bubbles in certain parts of the market, because if lots of people have that exact same idea, what's going to happen is that, like, let's take Hidden Fates. All right, people are going to buy tons and tons of Hidden Fates, and what happened? Pokemon is doing a reprint right now. How big the reprint is, we don't know, but they could do another reprint too if everyone bought these out and just keep reprinting it. So the winner is the Pokemon company. The Pokemon company is selling 3 times or whatever the amount that they would have just to collectors, because the investor flipper types are buying 10, 20, 30 tins or boxes. And later on down the line, if the Pokemon hobby isn't as popular, or the set goes down in popularity, those people are going to have a hard time, recouping the value. I'm not sure they're going to have a hard time, recouping in terms of like getting the price they paid for it, if they really got it, at retail or whatever. But it is possible that could happen too, because hobbies do, and this really happened in comic. There's a lot of differences in comic books to Pokemon, but what happened, in 90s comic book collecting was exactly that, is people were buying all of the modern stuff, were buying many copies of the multiple stuff during when it was most popular. And then it became less popular, and everyone had all those extra copies that they were hoping to resell later, that they weren't able to resell. 80s, right? Am I wrong? 80s or 90s, whatever. I mix up my sports collecting with my comic book collecting. I believe comic book was 80s.
I agree with your analysis, and I don't, especially with keeping sealed boxes, like I don't think it's bad at all. Like I really agree with the argument that David Person made when we interviewed him, which is there's only going to be less of that in the future. And so if, other people are going to be opening it either to have fun or to enjoy it with their kids, or hoping to like open, beat the expected value and get cards graded, or to do on a YouTube channel, right, to get views or like money through those views. There's so many reasons people can open boxes. And so someone who says like, I don't want to open mine, I just want to keep it, but if it ever becomes worth more, I'm going to sell it. That doesn't strike me as wrong at all. Next question is from TCG Authority. My question is, where does modern product start and stop in your opinion? As it's definitely a gray area.
I think that WotC is sort of its own thing. Wizards of the Coast is sort of its own thing, and will always be its own thing, and have its own collector's identity, and will always be the vintage. I think that that it outside of that, I kind of think it's sort of subjective. I think most people at this point would say, because the gold stars and the Nintendo EX, that original era is kind of so much more expensive and is so difficult to find. I think that's getting sort of a vintage, meets the vintage criteria. People view that as pretty vintage. I also think that similarly up to 2016, even 2015, when there was a big boom, I think that stuff, it'll be easier for that to be called vintage because there's like going to be less of that stuff. And so it's going to feel older. It's going to feel before lots and lots of people got interested in the hobby again. There's definitely no criteria. If you look at sports or you look at other things like 40 years ago might not be vintage for sports still, because sports card collecting is so much older, they might consider vintage as, 80, 60, 80 years ago. Because Pokemon doesn't have that much time, we consider something 20 years ago vintage, where in another hobby it certainly wouldn't be. So it's all sort of, subjective and semantics at the end of the day.
Yeah, for me personally, I kind of like the definition of having modern be everything that's black and white. So that's like generation 5 onwards, because that is the format for the card game, right? So if you play the expanded format in the card game, everything from black and white onwards is legal. And I'm pretty sure, as far as I know, it's going to stay that way. So if you play with any cards that are from before black and white, you can't really, there's no like format for you except for, these like unlimited formats that aren't that popular to play the game with. So I think this next one is going to be our last question for now before we do a part 2. BA asks, what WotC cards do you think are overvalued at this moment and which are still undervalued in both graded and ungraded? And besides evolutions, what set are you worried people are holding a lot of sealed product for?
Wow. Okay. What WotC cards do I think are over and what are under? Honestly, everything has moved up so much at this point. I'm not sure I would feel comfortable saying like this feels definitely undervalued. I don't think we know how much the demand has really grown and how sustainable the demand is. And until I get a sense of that, I'm not going to really have my own answer for what I feel like. Do I feel like things are still undervalued, or do I think things are being driven up more by short-term hype and fad rather than like genuine long-term collector interest? I think if we compare things to each other, I still think that there are some cards, base set first edition comes to mind as something that, because the other sets move so much, there's some value, I think, to be had, maybe comparatively to other sets in that. I bought a big lot, which I'll show, on the channel. I actually bought something of PSA first edition common, uncommon, and rare cards. And I think there can be some value in that. I've talked before how I think there can be value in some of the non-holo uncommon, common, first edition PSA 10 cards from Fossil and Jungle as well, because they're the first, original cards of those, 151, 150 Pokemon. So I think there's probably still some value there. As far as like overvalued, there isn't anything that I think Team Rocket is such a difficult one, because based on like the amount of it that I see, it does seem to be, the prices do seem high to me. But Team Rocket is such an insanely popular set that, at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't matter. There could be twice as much Team Rocket, or 10 times as much Team Rocket first edition as some of the Neo sets potentially, right? But if the Team Rocket set is 10 times more popular, then it's valued at the price it's valued. So I think we're going to have to see how those things work over time. When younger people and people in their 20s tend to get more money, who maybe were more into the Nintendo EX era and more into maybe the end of Wizards of the Coast, even the Neo Genesis and like those more than the original 150, potentially, you might see some of those things balance out because they don't like that Team Rocket set maybe as much as the Neo sets over time. But I'm not really sure. So
the second part of the question was, are there any sealed products besides evolutions that you think people are holding on to too much?
Yeah, I mean, Hidden Fates worries me, even though I think Hidden Fates is amazing. I think the same thing's happening with Shining Legends now. I think some bigger YouTubers started talking about Shining Legends and how great Shining Legends was, and even though I don't think people were really experiencing it that way, originally as much, now people are I see people sort of hoarding Shining Legends, and that was something that was on the shelves for years that you could get at the original price.
Yeah,
And
I'm
so
actually really
part of
curious
that
about
is,
Shining Legends, and I don't
yeah,
know because when it came out, like I loved it. I thought it was awesome.
yeah,
Obviously, it's before like Hidden Fates like spoiled us and made like tons of shiny cards, but Shining Legends had I think it was like 10 or something of the Shining mythical Pokemon. And I was like, this set is amazing. I bought a bunch of sealed stuff just to open for fun. Like I opened all of it. But then I kept on seeing it on the shelves. I was like, if I waited, the price would have been even lower. And that actually caused me to make a mistake with Hidden Fates. Like I didn't buy a lot of sealed Hidden Fates, even though I wanted to get a bunch of stuff just to open, like with Jake for fun. And I was like, oh, the price is going to come down in a couple of years. Like they'll be like selling this on Amazon for like half as much. And it just never happened, right? And it sold out. So I honestly don't know if it's because the demand for Shining Legends was lower or just because they printed a ton more of that anticipating higher demand. And then they decided to not make the same mistake with Hidden Fates.
and I think the third possibility is just that Pokemon's a lot more popular now than it was. And so Hidden Fate, there are just a lot more people in it. So if Shining Legends was happen now, you'd see a lot more of that, driving the price up initially and then keeping the price up.
I'm
And
honestly not
buying
sure.
that
I mean,
stuff
it's
off.
like the counter argument would be like Shining Legends was basically right after the peak of like Pokemon Go. So I think
Yeah.
like Pokemon overall might have been more popular then, but now because of like quarantine, people might have just been buying up Hidden Fates to like have something to open up at home for fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Pokemon is more popular now, and there are a lot more people investing in Pokemon. Just that's my gut. That's my
Even
sense.
then after the height of Pokemon Go.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think that I don't know how many people left the market after Pokemon Go. That would be interesting, and maybe it's something that we can do a video on and look more into the numbers. We can see how much Pokemon sold each year. And if anyone else in the comment section who might know more, I think that it's a guessing game of sorts. But I think when you see the huge increases in prices right now, and more money coming into it, you can think one of two things. You can think either wealthier people are coming in, or you can think that a lot more people are now in the market than there were then. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that the movement this time around is more than the movement then. A lot of people clearly joined the hobby then, right? But a lot of those people, in 2016, but a lot of those people probably stayed in the hobby, and now we have a lot more people joining. So there's a larger amount now, theoretically, we would say, which means that that maybe Pokemon didn't predict that, and so was printing smaller amounts before, and now they're going to be printing more to meet the demands that they can make as much money as possible. We'll see. That stuff all worries me, but I could definitely be wrong, right? I think the Shining Legends is cool. I own those cards in PSA 10 and the Japanese versions because I like them a lot. But those prices going up a lot on those, like I just wonder how, like that makes me nervous just because those cards are so easy to find still. And I'm telling you, people have like hundreds of those cards in binders in gem mint condition. Like I've seen people with binders filled with those cards in gem mint condition, and they're just, or I've never seen a collection of that like with Neo Shining cards. And so I just want people like to think about like when you see the prices go up 5 times on those cards versus the 5 times on the Neo Shining cards at the same time, it's like I would much rather have the Neo Destiny in terms of like the rarity scarcity, and would just worry that so much more product is going to come on the market because now people can grade those cards and make like $200. You can grade your PSA 10 card and then flip it and make $200 because some of those cards are going for like $250 now from what I've seen in PSA 10.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people are buying the product because they see, oh, I can open the product and then sell and, flip the product because now the cards inside are actually worth more than the sealed product. And so the sealed product is going to come up in value to meet that. But I actually think that the PSA 10 cards and those things are overvalued and will actually come down potentially, but nobody really knows, and everyone is free to gamble the way they see fit,
Unless you're doing a raffle. Yeah, just kidding. We'll wrap it up there and we'll resume next time. See ya.